I have good news and I have bad news. Which would you like first?
Mm, good news.
Okay, the good news is that there is a direct sequel to '89's Batman coming in October, which is supposed to be a novel that will bridge the events from Batman '89, which is what we're going to be talking about, to Batman '92. So it's sort of this weird origin story for Catwoman. Um, it has to deal with the dismantling of the Joker crime family that he sort of created as the Jack Nicholson version of him. Uh,
Mm,
the other part of the good news is that the Batman '89 comics that were made in 20 that were started in 2016 are kind of incredible. So that's the really good news is that Batman '89 lives on viably and not just in the DC TV universe.
mm. And you said that's going to be a film, did you say?
It's going to be a novelization. I don't think it's going to get turned
Ah,
into a film necessarily, but it's going to be a novel, which I
mm,
kind of like as the idea because it's really
okay.
calls back to the pulp detective heritage of
Mm.
things.
Indeed. And dare I ask then, what's the flip side of the coin? What's the bad news?
The bad news is that we do not live in a universe where we'll ever see Batman Unchained. Batman Unchained was supposed to be the fifth movie in the
Mm,
Burton Shoemaker saga, the one that followed Batman and Robin, and it was supposed to be about Scarecrow, and it looks like Dr. Quinzel. So we got some of that with the Bale
mm,
Batman, but it's obviously not the same. It features a sort of part of this overarching story with Ra's al Ghul, sort of a new version of
mm,
the origin story. But we don't live in a universe, and I'm always kind of wondering, and I don't know if Schumacher directed. I don't think Clooney would have came back for it, but I always kind of wonder what it would have looked like to have this quintet of films about this particular version of Batman in the sort of chaotic German expressionistic fever dream of Gotham City that we did get. And
mm,
I think that's part of what makes Batman '89 work is that Batman '89 and Returns in '92, which I felt was so big it probably needed its own episode. Um, this is these are like fever dream Batman movies, like 95 and 97's Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are a little too 90s, which is part of why I love them, but they don't necessarily age well for other people. This particular Batman '89 is a movie that was trying to live up to what the first Superman movie did in '78, and it succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dream. And the only thing that came out of the original version of it that lasted was the fact that everybody wanted Jack Nicholson to play the Joker. That's the only thing from the original, like from the start of the concept of this film, that really worked. This is how do you feel about Batman '89? How do you feel about the first Michael Keaton Batman
Whew. Um, difficult to sum up one's feelings. I know for a fact that Jack Nicholson's Joker, his face still terrifies me to this day. There's a real element of dementedness within his feet, within like how he's made out to be, etc. That is actually, quite disturbing, and that really carries across. Um, I'm not sure how I could sum up my feelings really about the
film?
1989 film. It kind of feels as though you said about a fever dream before. I almost wonder if this was a crazy dream that Adam West's 1966 Batman had after too many snaps one night.
I actually really like that. That there are a lot of things that Batman goes through that really do feel like a dream. So the reason I asked about your feeling about it is
Mm,
because this is not necessarily a film about. There is plot because films have to have a plot.
mm,
Otherwise, they're kind of absurdist, and some of them would just kind of plot along. Um, this really is a film about mood from the Danny Elfman score to the Prince soundtrack, which are like two different versions of the film music, actually. This is really a lot of people talk about the influence of Metropolis and Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which have that very famous German expressionism look, which we saw in the Universal monster films in the 1940s. So, really, Batman 89, right down to the poster with the color of that kind of gold yellow bat symbol, with the promise of Batman being kind of this avenging angel for this very
Mm,
not quite gritty, but definitely back to its 1930s serialized roots version of Gotham. There's something kind of intimate about this version of Gotham that makes it seem kind of small, even where Bruce lives in his like castle, kind of removed from the main city, feels like there's something about even the size of the newsroom that Vicki Vale works at with Arliss, whose name I can never remember, um, that feels very like squished. It's very mechanical. It's very factory driven. It's very it's very much like Sweeney Todd in a lot of
mm,
ways. And I think Batman 89 is a feelings movie. I think it's why people really like there were people that like they were in tears like clapping for this film after they saw the first kind of press release of it to try to get people excited because they were very concerned about
mm,
Michael Keaton. They didn't think a comedic actor could do Batman, which again, Adam West, but also I think you kind of have to be a comedic actor to work as Batman. I think if anything, that's part of where I sort of lose George Clooney. It's because George Clooney wasn't really a comedic actor. He did some sitcom stuff, but he wasn't. I feel like Michael Keaton gets kind of the timing of Batman, and also the costuming put him in a very dark place because it was very hard to see and move in. But I think that comic timing and Burton's penchant to really lean into mood, really
mm,
besides Jack Nicholson. Um, Kim Basinger as Vicki Vale, I like. She is very damsel in distress, but not
mm,
so much that it distracts. She still seems very realized. This
mm.
is my favorite. My favorite Alfred is this 89 Alfred who's desperately trying to get Michael Keaton and Vicki Vale to stay in the same room together long enough to fall in love because he's like, I just want Bruce to be happy and have a woman. And like the Joker's getting in the way of this. So, like this movie, if we did it from like Alfred's point of view, this movie is like the comedy of errors of sassy Alfred like making the meal and being like, "Oh, I made you nothing because I knew you weren't going to be here for it." Like this would be like full on at some point sassy Alfred universe, and I'm kind
Mm.
of living for it.
You're kind of giving me the nanny vibes with that. Niles with Fran and Mr. Sheffield, and Niles' attempts to play matchmaker and such. I'm getting sort of vibes from that in regards to this Alfred, almost.
I think so. I think
Mm,
so. Yeah, and I think there's something about this version that does it's not a funny film, but I think it leans into the humor of the insanity of what Gotham is, not in a camp
mm,
way, but it really does do the work of this is a little insane. Like it doesn't like full on go out, it doesn't go full Batman Who Laughs mode, but it really does give you the idea of Gotham is this insane place that breeds people that are disturbed, which is kind of what Burton really pushed for. It sounds like the idea of
mm,
the Joker and Batman are two very disturbed people that just happen to go about it a different way. But not that Gotham pays for their being disturbed, but that like things happen in the city and there is probably something in the air and water that make it happen, and like you can see it in 89 Batman that it's probably
mm.
something in the water and why would you want to live here sort of thing.
Indeed. Just to briefly mention it, they kind of took that concept a little further in another adaptation from a couple of years ago. Did you hear that they did a Lovecraftian Batman animated movie?
They did, and they're doing like a kind of Eldritch Batman graphic
Mm,
novel series as well. They're taking
mm,
all the things that work about Batman that keep him from being in Justice League Dark. And they're just really, it's kind of like Batman in the samurai era. You can take the convictions of what Batman does and really code it to a lot of things. I think that's why Batman works so well with Scooby
Mm,
Doo and the Scooby Doo movies as well. Is that Batman was
mm.
kind of programmed still as that sort of father figure with detective
Yes.
capabilities. Batman 89 is full on like detective, not quite martial artist, but not quite fully realized.
Mm.
And Jack Nicholson's The Joker is just insane enough to think poisoning an entire city with Smilex is a good idea. So here you go, ta-da, perfect film. It's no notes, everything is great. Giant parade balloons, print soundtrack. What else do you need? You know?
Well, that's the thing. We've talked about briefly touched upon other versions of Batman and such. You mentioned about this version of Batman definitely feels not so, he's not so much ninja as the Christian Bale one was kind of brought
Yeah,
across in some of his training and such. You can imagine Michael Keaton's Batman undergoing ninja training, but he comes more across as the sort of detective, hard-boiled figure sort of thing. Just happens to wear a stiff suit, a very almost operatic kind of
yeah,
persona, and that's something I wanted to like kind of link to again. Some of the sets and the characterizations that come across give me very strong ambiance connections to Phantom of the Opera. In sort of like this, this city setting with very strong people with very strong personalities, sort of almost chewing the scenery when they enter an area, so to
yeah.
speak.
I really think this is an interview with the vampire sort of mythology building Batman.
Mm,
I don't think it's any mistake. It's sort of built on the 86 Dark Knight Returns and on the Killing Joke. It's built on this mythology of the whispers of Batman become realized almost as if Batman forms into a man, as if to answer the whispers. And everything in this film is cause and effect. It's not a plot so much as it's a whole bunch of V for Vendetta dominoes that fall, that all happen to fall in one direction. The Joker ends up becoming the Joker because Jack Nicholson as Jack Napier, ends up in the chemical plant factory because he was sleeping with the mob boss's wife, and so he's going to get killed. But then the guy sent to kill him gets killed by Batman, and then Batman sleeps him into the vat. And like everything about this plot like is a little bit insane in the best way, but it all feels like mythology building. Like the idea Jack Nicholson Joker dies, but we don't necessarily live in a world where Batman villains die. And so though he falls with the like ghoulish cathedral gargoyle at the end, which is a very nice like Hunchback of Notre Dame moment, there's no way of knowing one if he's dead, two, like how this will actually affect. That's why I'm so excited for the graphic tie-in novel because there's so
mm,
much in 89's Batman that isn't resolved in 92's Batman Returns, which might arguably be the better Batman film, I think. But there's something very interesting about someone looking at the comics, which are trying to rehabilitate Batman's image with the Killing Joke and Dark Knight Returns, and says, okay, let's reapproach how we do this in live action popular media. Let's get away from the Super Friends. Let's get away from Bat Dad. Let's completely take his ward out of the picture so there's no distractions. And let me tell you, if that's the reason we ended up getting Chris O'Donnell, I'm all for it because hello, thank you.
mm,
So there is a version of the script, a very early version, where it was very much about um, Bruce meeting Bruce meeting his ward, and I'm kind of glad because I feel like almost all the Batman and Superman origin films have the same issue of where it's the same story told over and over again, and it
mm,
becomes less interesting. But that's sort of why I liked the Batman Lego movie was because they were like, yes, you've heard this origin story plenty of times, so we're going to make it fun. Um, I appreciate this as an origin story that isn't an origin story specifically. I think Batman
mm.
89 succeeds because even though it was trying to copy Superman right down to being filmed in the same place where Superman was filmed. Um, it went its own way, and it's much stronger for having gone its own way. I
Mm.
like Vicki Vale. I do think she wasn't. I feel like there's a version of her that is more femme fatale than damsel in distress. But I actually like Vicki Vale as like this human reporter trying hard just to do right in the city of absolutely insane people, both of whom have fallen in love with her. Both the Joker and Bruce Wayne, and maybe a little bit of Batman, like really have a thing for her. And like I never felt like she was in mortal danger the same way I feel like Nicole Kidman later on was in mortal danger. But I gotta
Mm.
tell you, something about Vicki Vale works for me, not because she's a Lois Lane clone. I don't think that's what they were going for Kim Basinger. Much like Kim Basinger in Cool World is not a clone of Jessica Rabbit. But I think that Vicki Vale works because Batman does need someone to save. That's part of the Batman mythology, is that Batman needs something to have justice for. And so whether it's the city of Gotham or Vicki herself, like
Mm.
Batman doesn't work without a Gotham. Batman doesn't work in a city where normal people have proportionate responses. If Batman tried to pull the crap that he does in like Central City or wherever Flash is, Star City, Star Labs, whatever it is. Like it doesn't
Mm.
work. Batman in Metropolis is out of place because everything is bright and shiny because of Superman. Like Batman kind of has to be in Gotham, and though this Batman is not concerned with world relations, he's also not a member of the board of directors at Wayne Enterprises. So it's not as bogged down in Batman as businessman as the Bale Batman films are, I feel like, a little bit. Which when we
Mm.
talk about that, I'll talk about that as like an uneven subplot, as it were. But I think 89 Batman really, as kind of callback to the 30s Pop Boiler Detective Bat, works because he is a detective, but he's not. It's really sort of this like kind of wonderful romance Batman. Which
Mm.
is it's like a dark, twisted romance, which is really what Batman does and is.
Mm.
And then Batman Returns is almost the perfect follow up because then there's real dark and twisted romance and lots of things about masks that we don't get in '89, and I don't think '89 would have been served with the whole like masks subplot. So yeah,
Mm. Yes. Um, hmm. I'm trying to remember, is Vicky in the comics or was she an original character for this?
I think they put Vicky in the comics after this. I could be wrong.
Uh,
I have not done enough research to know exactly. But there
mm.
are characters like Batwoman, who is like a brief character for a time that you could read as a Vicky Vale tie-in. They so when they reboot Batman every now and then rebooting Batman, they get rid of a whole bunch of side characters. Like they've done it like two or three times now.
Mm.
But I do think that Vicky Vale probably because now the Batman '89 comics are a thing. So if she wasn't before, she definitely is now. But I don't. If she was a character, she wasn't a like a permanent like. This is when he goes to talk to Jim Gordon. This is when he goes to talk to Vicky Vale.
Mm.
And I think that kind of works. I don't know. I'm gonna look it up because now I'm like I want to give the right information for it.
Mm.
Um,
So,
yeah,
as you say, it feels like they've edited her character to give Batman someone to save, but also perhaps as well to give a love interest focus for his attentions and such to show the human underneath the mask and
yeah,
such. Um, Before with the Adam West Batman, like he showed concern for his ward, for Alfred and such, and he clearly has concern for Alfred in this, but in a way, they were trying to bring someone in that could show the human side of the character.
yeah,
Um, Although, as you say, it's very much a mythology building sort of movie, and there's quite a grandiose air to this. As you say, the poster is iconic. The sets feel even if it's focused on Gotham, the sets still are quite atmospheric in how they are. Um, so it's definitely feeling quite, I suppose atmospheric is the right way to put it.
All right, I want to come back to Vicki Vale because I have the Wikipedia page open. By the way, a lot of my Batman stuff doesn't just come from Wikipedia. I actually have some interesting stuff about Batman because he's not my favorite superhero by any stretch, but I'm so intrigued by kind of the peaks and valleys of the Batman mythology and how many times it gets reinvented. Vicki Vale like appears and disappears. Sometimes she's married, sometimes she was in Europe on vacation. There's one version where she's the daughter of Alfred Pennyworth.
Oh.
So like Vicki Vale sometimes get replaced by Barbara, sometimes is in direct competition to Catwoman. Sometimes she gets renamed. It's like in Batman the Animated Series, um, she's a different character, but she's Vicki Vale coded. And so Vicki Vale has been around since the beginning of the series, but she was uh she was one of the people that disappeared um during the Silver Age purge, along with Batgirl, Batmite, and Ace the Bat Hound, who came back later. Um, so like she's kind of in and out of the series as sort of this female foil who could end up being with Batman. Um, and like all female characters in comics, she's very unevenly written. Uh, even Selena Kyle couldn't escape that. But there's something interesting is that her one of her first appearances in film, she actually played a reporter in the Batman and Robin uh, film serial in '49, and she was played by Jane Addams. So Vicki
Hmm.
Vale actually has been in more Batman films than Nicole Kidman's Dr. Chase Meridian was, which
Hmm.
what a wonderful character Chase Meridian was. I really can't. I cannot. Yeah. So she's been in the Batman Arkham video game franchise.
Oh, that's
Apparently she
interesting.
was in the Batman versus Dracula. Um, which yeah.
What
Yeah,
I wonder if she was cast as one of Dracula's victims because he does have a pre-chance for
yeah,
young women, so I could see him going after that, and then that gives Bruce motivation to beat the fangs out of Dracula.
yeah. This Batman versus Dracula is one of the like brave and bold New 52 post Flashpoint Batman. So it's relatively recent, you can tell. So we're not going to talk about it at any length here until we start
Mm,
getting to the animated stuff at some point. But yeah, so Vicki Vale is one of those kind of uneven female characters who is both meant to inform but also swoon. It's a very important kind of structural job we do in building mythology. You always need a character who is human in this world of mythological creatures. Otherwise, like you need an Alfred character to ground Bruce so he doesn't become the Joker, thinking he's still doing good. You need Vicki Vale to kind of get rescued, and because the whole like second act of this movie, I don't know if it works because Jack Napier is so insane. He doesn't really have a reason. Like, he can't pay attention long enough to hate Batman until someone puts him on Ritalin. So you actually need Vicki Vale in this movie. Like, you need sort of this romantic woman subplot because Batman needs a reason besides Gotham to save Gotham. He doesn't have that yet in his mythology. And it builds
mm,
into that. It's actually quite nice. I think Batman 89, the more I look at it, is maybe the perfect Batman film. I mean, there's other stuff I love about other Batman films, but if you're looking at mythology origin stories, this certainly succeeds more than Joseph Gordon Levitt is going to become Robin. Like it certainly succeeds better than that in a lot of ways. Like it does in one film what Christian Bale's Batman was trying so hard to do in three. And that's not to completely dog on Christian Bale's Batman. And I think the Nolan Batman films are good for what they are. And I think the Pattinson film is not awful. Um, but this '89 Batman changed a lot of the way people looked at Batman And also,
Mm.
the only reason we have Batman the Animated Series from 92 is because this film particularly worked. We don't get this film and have it succeed. We don't get Kevin Conroy Batman. And a world without Kevin Conroy Batman makes me very sad. Um, and if you want to know
Mm.
more about that, you have to buy the DC Pride issue where he did his life story in comics and about how his work as Batman helped him come out of the closet.
Aw.
Yeah, so this 89 Batman is so important. I would almost
Mm.
argue without 89 Batman extending the darkness of the Killing Joke, um, we probably don't get the Batman Who Laughs and Batman Metal. Um, like we might have gotten it. Batman doesn't really affect the Teen Titans in this version of it because we don't really get a Dick Grayson young enough to take over Teen Titans as a younger Robin.
Mm.
Um, but this is a
Yeah.
seminal
Yes.
piece of superhero work.
Mm.
Maybe a seminal piece of dark work in like a neo-German expressionism sort of way. Hard to say.
Mm. And the reverberations go on even furthermore. Um, Similar to how the Spider-Man movies have been acknowledged, and I'm talking about the Tobey Maguire ones here, just to clarify. Similar to how the Tobey Maguire movies set up the stage to allow Marvel to eventually develop the MCU and such, because if they hadn't succeeded so well, it wouldn't have convinced Marvel to take a chance on doing Iron Man and such. Because there wasn't really a big gap between that era of the Marvel movies with that Spider-Man trilogy and then the Fantastic Four and the start of the MCU with Iron Man, etc.
Yeah.
Um, Similar to how that happened, you do have other reverberations with this Batman with later works. Um, One little fact I found interesting was after all of the 90s Batman movies and such, it really encouraged the rise of DC properties within television. So, for example, like Birds of Prey and such. Um, and then 2001, you had Smallville, which was the successful Superman origin prequel series. However,
Uh,
originally, sorry, go on.
by the way, Smallville is the only TV series to run. It's the first TV series that eclipsed Batman 66. Before Smallville, Batman 66 was the longest running superhero series on TV. That's something I learned that I didn't get to
Ooh.
say in the other summer shorts. So Smallville and Batman 66 actually have quite a bit in common,
Mm.
which is really cool.
Mm. Oh, interesting. Um, and what my point was going to be was originally, due to the success of the 90s Batman movies, Smallville wasn't originally going to be Superman. Originally, it was going to be a Batman prequel series called Gotham, which they were going to develop. They wanted to tell the whole origin story about Bruce Wayne, how he became the Batman and such, but they wanted to tell it in a very sort of CW aimed at teens and young adults sort of way to reintroduce the character.
Yeah,
However, due to I think it was also as much as the Batman movies reinvigorated it, it also held them back a bit because the fact that those movies come out and such, there was so much Batman, they were worried about oversaturating with Batman. So what they did instead is they went, well, this isn't working, but can we retool it in a way that makes it more palatable? Um, and when I say retooling, if you look online, you can find a lot of information, a lot of scripts, a lot of character references of what they were actually going to do for this Gotham prequel series. It was almost like a fully written out series Bible, but they decided in the end, actually, it might be better to go with someone else. So instead, they set it up to be a Superman prequel series. So you would not have got Smallville without the success of the previous Batman
yeah,
movies. And Smallville set up the stage for the various other DC popular properties that came in the mid 2010s, early 2000s, and such. Arrow, Flash, etc. That's all gone now, and we're now seeing another sort of reboot era about to hit us with what's going to happen with Superman 2025. Who knows what that's going to be? And who knows how all the Batman stuff is going to tie in?
Yeah, I think there is. So I've said it before when we did stuff in the '90s. There was something about how movies were made in the '90s that were
Hmm.
really about blockbustering, but did surprising,
Mm.
amazing artistic stuff. There's a lot of stuff in the background of this film,
Oh,
people that
yes.
ended up not being able to work about it, the 1988 writers' strike that happened that forced rewrites and have writers on it that weren't credited all the time. There's so much about this movie that could have gone south. The audience could have hated enough that it got buried at Warner Brothers, but it really did succeed because people took a shot. They recognized that you have to take a little bit of a risk in order to have the payback. Like something 89 Batman does was different from 66 Batman is that 89 Batman was a part of a part of the wave of leading the charge in changing Batman. 66 Adam West Batman and Super Friends Batman, Scooby Doo Batman after that was about riding this wave of camp and safety. And Batman 89 is not a safe film. It's also much easier to market because Batman Returns, in a way, is so much a Christmas film. You don't realize until you watch it. Batman 92 is such a film made for the holiday season, including almost all the like marketing material and toys, it feels like. This Batman 89 film could really take place almost at any time in the mythology of Gotham City. It's such there's something about having the sets look like sets that really feels like you're watching a movie, but that's not a bad thing. It doesn't detract from it. It doesn't need to be a completely quote unquote immersive experience to work. It is immersive in its own way, but like the scene, I still think about the scene in the museum where you can almost hear Michael Caine's voice. Some men just want to watch the world burn speech from later Batman films, but you see it here visually, and it's so impactful. And I can just imagine that, like, this Batman 89 soundtrack, I feel the same way about the soundtrack almost as I feel about the soundtrack to Batman Forever, in which this is where you discover things that you're going to love for the rest of your life. In this case, it's Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo, and maybe even in some cases Prince. But there's such iconography to Batman that when you see it done really well, you're seeing something very special. And for me, Batman 89 is that special. It's I don't know if it's my favorite Batman film, but it's such a special one you can't not stop and recognize it for what it is, which is really cool.
Mm. Indeed, I think I think that pretty much sums up
Yeah,
um anything I could say about the movie as well. Um, and we're running close to time now. So,
yeah.
was there anything else that you wanted to add in quickly to round off this
Uh,
episode?
the one thing I want to add in is that I know this movie has gotten dunked on by those YouTube channels that love to dunk on movies as being unrealistic. I want to say to them specifically, I don't care that the Smilex subplot is kind of dumb. I like that it's kind of dumb. I don't need my Joker to be the hyper genius. I need my Joker to be kind of dumb. And that's what Jack Nicholson is. He's scary and he's a little dumb and he's pure emotion and he's not logic. And yes, the Smilex, yes, the parade thing is a little weird and a little obtuse. You know what? I like that about this film. I like that it's weird and obtuse. And every time you pull apart one of these movies thinking, I'm such a genius, clap me on the back, give me claps because, look, I'm saying a thing that's provocative. You're not being provocative. You're just being dumb. It's okay. Smilex doesn't have to be the perfect like villain introduction thing. It's not Scarecrow in the Nolan Batman films. That's something else completely. Um, I like that portion of the film, and I
Mm.
will die on that hill. And it's okay if it's not. Not everything has to be life and stake balance. So that's kind of my kind of rant against the people that are like, "Oh, this plot point doesn't work." This movie really isn't about the plot. It is because it's a film, but not all plot driven movies have to be about plot in some way. Like, so yeah, that's my kind of rant about people that think they're too clever to enjoy this movie.
Mm. Indeed. Well, I mean, they're going on about a superhero movie
Yeah,
with crazy madmen and powers and what have you. So, yeah, well, they can have their opinion, I suppose.
it's true. Their opinion is wrong, but they can totally have it.
Mm.
Well, this has been a fun summer. Not an introduction to summer shorts. This will be the second episode, but this is a fun way to do summer shorts. We'll be back with more summer shorts about more live action Batman films. We've gotten some requests for Batman and Robin, which might work, but it might be tight for half an hour. I do eventually. The Nolan films might be its own bigger thing with the trilogy, so we might go right into Pattinson, but we have to talk about it. But
Mm.
we'll see what we deliver for more summer shorts to help you stay cool and chilly and a little bit insane, just like Awesome City. We'll see you next time on Everything is Gay, Even the Straight Stuff, Summer Shorts Edition.